What do you think happens when absolute power falls into the hands of someone who's lost his mind? Imagine a ruler who orders executions just to entertain himself, who dresses his horse in royal robes and plans to make him a senator. You might think this sounds like a legend, but ancient Rome lived it every day. His name was Caligula, and some say he was the most dangerous man to ever wear the imperial crown. In just 4 years, he left behind a trail of horrors so deep, so unforgettable, that 2,000 years later, his name still sends a chill through history books. This is the legend of Caligula, the cruelest emperor in Roman history. So who was Caligula before everyone hated him? Most people know him as a madman, a murderer, and a tyrant who ruled Rome with cruelty and chaos. But Caligula was not born a monster. He was born into a family of heroes, raised among soldiers, and celebrated as a symbol of Rome's future. His early life was shaped by tragedy, power, and fear, and many historians believe that the seeds of his cruelty were planted in those early years, long before he wore the imperial robe. Caligula was born on August 31st in the year 12 AD, in the Roman town of Antium. His real name was Gaius Julius Caesar Germanicus. He belonged to one of the most powerful bloodlines in Roman history. His father, Germanicus, was the grandson of Mark Antony. His mother, Agrippina the Elder, was the granddaughter of Augustus, the first emperor of Rome. Caligula's family name carried weight across the empire. People expected greatness from him before he could even speak. Germanicus was a popular general. The Roman army loved him. The people of Rome saw him as the rightful successor to Emperor Tiberius. When Caligula was just a toddler, his mother dressed him in a tiny soldier's uniform with small boots called caligae. The soldiers adored the little boy and gave him the nickname Caligula, which meant little boots. He marched with the troops through Germania, not as a warrior, but as a symbol of the future. He smiled beside his father in parades. He stood before crowds and even gave a speech at the age of 6. Wherever Germanicus went, Caligula followed. But the golden image of the family did not last long. In the year 19 AD, Germanicus became sick during a trip to the eastern provinces. He died in Antioch, and his wife Agrippina believed he had been poisoned. Many suspected that Emperor Tiberius had ordered the murder, afraid that Germanicus had become too powerful and too loved. Whether that was true or not, the death of his father shattered Caligula's world. He was only 7 years old. His father's ashes were carried back to Rome in a slow and painful funeral procession. Caligula, along with his mother and siblings, followed the coffin through the streets. After Germanicus's death, the family became a threat in the eyes of the emperor. Agrippina was ambitious and outspoken. She pushed her sons towards the throne. Tiberius saw this as a danger. He blocked her from remarrying. He watched her movements closely, and soon he acted. In the year 29 AD, Agrippina and Caligula's older brother Nero were arrested for treason. The head of the emperor's Praetorian Guard, a power-hungry man named Sejanus, helped ensure their demise. They were accused of plotting against the emperor and sent into exile. A year later, Caligula's older brother, Drusus, was also declared an enemy of the state. He too was removed. Both brothers would die in exile. Agrippina would never return. Caligula, now alone, was sent to live with his great-grandmother, Livia, and later with his grandmother, Antonia. He was a young boy, separated from his family, surrounded by enemies. By 31 AD, Caligula was taken to the island of Capri, where Emperor Tiberius had retired. The emperor was old, paranoid, and isolated. He ruled from a distance and lived in luxury, surrounded by whispers of cruelty and corruption. On Capri, Caligula became a shadow. He smiled when Tiberius smiled. He stayed silent when others screamed. He learned to survive in a place where one wrong word could lead to death. He watched as Tiberius ordered executions, forced confessions, and fed his paranoia. Some say this is where Caligula's mind began to break. Others say he was simply learning how to rule in a world without trust or mercy. On Capri, he lived like a prince, but walked on the edge of fear. He knew what had happened to his mother. He knew his brothers had vanished. He had no friends, no protection, and no freedom. But he had something else: patience. In 33 AD, Tiberius's adopted son and Caligula's older brother, Drusus, died in captivity, having been accused of treason. He had been Tiberius's heir, and his brutal death by starvation now left a gap in the line of succession. Caligula became the most likely heir, along with his cousin Gemellus. 2 years later, Tiberius named them both as joint heirs, but Caligula had something Gemellus didn't: the support of the Praetorian Guard. After Sejanus's fall from grace, the man who had helped Tiberius purge many of Rome's elite, including Caligula's family, found himself the victim of the emperor's accusations of conspiracy. The new commander of the guard, a man named Macro, helped Caligula gain favour. He worked behind the scenes to secure his future. In March 37 AD, Emperor Tiberius died. Some say Caligula smothered him. Others believe Tiberius simply passed away from old age. Either way, Macro acted quickly. He had Caligula proclaimed emperor by the Praetorian Guard, the Senate gave its approval, the people of Rome, remembering Germanicus, welcomed him with cheers. Caligula was 24 years old. He had survived betrayal, exile, and terror. Now he stood at the head of the greatest empire in the world. The crowd saw a young, charming ruler, the son of a hero. They believed the dark years of Tiberius were over, but they had no idea what was coming. In the first months of his reign, Caligula gave the people exactly what they wanted. He cancelled unpopular taxes and brought home exiles. He freed political prisoners and restored public monuments. He paid bonuses to the soldiers and threw games that filled the streets with colour, food and noise. He gave his personal fortune to the people, pouring gold into the city. The Senate welcomed him with open arms. For a moment it seemed like Rome had a ruler who cared. The dark cloud left by the twilight years of a paranoid tyrant had finally lifted. But that light faded quickly. Just a few months after taking power, Caligula became seriously ill. He fell into a deep fever. His mind changed. His behaviour turned strange. Some blamed poison, others thought the sickness had damaged his brain. Whatever happened, the man who recovered was not the same one who had been crowned. After his illness, Caligula began to speak about himself in ways no emperor had ever before. He believed he was a god, not a servant of the gods, but a living god walking among men. He began to dress as Jupiter, the king of the Roman gods. He wore golden beards and carried thunderbolts in his hand. He posed next to statues of Jupiter and asked actors and guests which of them looked more powerful. When someone hesitated to answer, he had them whipped. He built a temple in his own honour. Inside stood a golden statue of Caligula, the same height as the emperor himself. Each day the statue was dressed in the exact clothes he wore. Rich Romans fought for the chance to become priests in this new temple, where they offered exotic animals like flamingos, peacocks, and pheasants to the living god. The temple was not placed far outside the city, it was attached to his palace. Caligula made himself the centre of religion and government at the same time. He wanted to move the famous statue of Zeus from Greece to Rome so he could cut off the head and replace it with his own. He told the people that the moon goddess had fallen in love with him. He claimed to speak to gods during the day and seduce them at night. At times he stood on balconies talking to the sky. He said the ocean whispered to him when he couldn't sleep. He asked his guards if they saw the moon goddess beside him. One man said that only gods could see other gods. Caligula smiled and made him a close advisor. He created new laws, some of them terrifying. No one was allowed to laugh near him. Laughter became a crime. Anyone who laughed during mourning or who even smiled in the wrong moment could be punished. After the death of his sister Drusilla, whom he loved deeply and possibly even desired, he declared a national mourning period. During that time, no one could bathe, attend parties, or eat with their families. Some were executed for disobeying. The empire was forced to cry when Caligula commanded it. He passed a law that no one could mention goats in his presence. His body was covered in thick hair and he believed people were mocking him. He also began to lose his hair like many of his ancestors. To hide his insecurity, he made it illegal for anyone to look down at him from a higher place. When he passed, people had to lower their heads or step down from stairs. He stared at himself in mirrors, practicing fearsome looks, trying to appear godlike. Guards were told to copy his expressions. Senators were humiliated in public. Caligula made them run alongside his chariot like slaves. He forced noblemen to fight in mock battles for entertainment. His power was no longer political. He didn't want to rule. He wanted to control. He wanted to break the dignity of every man who had ever stood proudly before him. Historians later argued whether Caligula was truly mad or simply cruel. But during these early years, there was no more questions in Rome. People saw the change. The emperor they had once cheered had become something else. He demanded worship. obedience, and silence. His rules made no sense. His punishments came without warning. The city that once danced in his honour now lived in fear of his voice. Everything he did served one purpose. He wanted to show that he could do anything, and that was just the beginning. Soon, things got much worse. Caligula enjoyed bathing in gold, drinking dissolved pearls, walking barefoot across carpets made of jewellery, and sleeping on floors covered in coins. He built floating palaces on giant ships filled with mosaics, marble columns, and heated baths. He wore clothes stitched with gemstones and served guests meals made of gold. At his banquets, he handed out dishes no one could eat and ordered musicians to play while nobles watched birds with jewelled collars fly around the room. Everything he touched was covered in wealth, and everything he built served only one purpose: to amaze, to dominate, and to prove that he could afford anything. All of it came with a cost. In the first year of his reign, Caligula spent nearly 2.7 billion sesterces, an amount that emptied the state treasury. He used Rome's money to fund games, festivals, temples, and massive personal projects. One of the most famous was a bridge made entirely of ships built across the Bay of Baiae. It stretched for miles, and Caligula crossed it on horseback, wearing the armour of Alexander the Great. The bridge had no purpose. He built it to show that he could command the sea. The empire paid for it. As the money ran out, Caligula looked for new ways to refill the treasury. He didn't reduce spending, he created taxes, and many of them were strange, cruel, or humiliating. He placed a tax on lawsuits, charging 2.5% of every case that was brought before the courts. He taxed groceries brought into the city. He taxed the wages of porters, artisans, and even slaves. He taxed prostitutes, including those who had retired or married. He placed a tax on marriage itself. To make sure the money came in, Caligula replaced traditional tax collectors with the military. He ordered centurions and tribunes of the Praetorian Guard to gather the taxes, turning soldiers into debt collectors. Citizens feared these visits. The soldiers arrived armed and angry. Many took more than what was owed. Those who complained were punished. Caligula also turned to theft. He accused wealthy citizens of treason or insult. After sentencing them to death, he seized their property. Sometimes he forged letters or changed wills to take their land. If a man died or did not leave enough money to the emperor, he was declared ungrateful. His belongings were taken. This happened to senators, generals, and merchants. Entire families lost everything overnight. Some committed suicide before the emperor could accuse them. He even claimed that every loyal citizen should leave him something in their will. He made lists of legacies he believed he deserved and sent guards to enforce them. This drained the estates of the rich and made death a dangerous event. People began to hide their wealth or give it away in secret, hoping the emperor would not notice. Among his most ambitious projects were the Nemi ships, 2 floating palaces anchored on Lake Nemi. They were massive, over 200 feet long and filled with luxury. They had marble floors, running water, heated rooms, banquet halls, and statues of gold. Their sails were made of coloured silk. They were built to sail nowhere. Caligula used them for parties. The money came from taxes and stolen fortunes. He also built tunnels through mountains, carved roads across rivers, and turned hills into plains just to watch the world bend to his will. He made craftsmen tear down walls and rebuild them without reason. He asked engineers to design buildings that could move. His taste for the impossible grew, and of course, his spending followed. The only thing Caligula loved more than pleasure, gold, and luxury was his horse. His favourite horse was named Incitatus, a white stallion whose name meant swift in Latin. Caligula treated Incitatus like royalty. He gave him a marble stable, an ivory manager, and a collar made of precious stones. Incitatus slept under purple blankets, the most expensive colour in Rome, worn only by emperors and gods. He had his own house with servants, furniture, and even slaves who served only him. Before race days, Caligula ordered complete silence in the neighbourhood to make sure his horse was well rested. Soldiers guarded the streets. No one was allowed to make noise near the stable. Caligula loved horse races and believed Incitatus deserved only the best. He fed him oats mixed with gold flakes and toasted to his health with wine poured into golden cups. He invited him to dinner, placed food before him at royal banquets, and treated the animal like a trusted advisor. When dignitaries came to visit, Caligula joked that Incitatus might invite them to dine in his house. Sometimes he spoke to the horse as if he were a senator. He even claimed that Incitatus understood politics better than men who sat in the Senate chamber. Then came the day Caligula made his most shocking announcement. He declared that Incitatus would become a consul of Rome. In Roman society, the position of consul was the highest political office. 2 consuls ruled side by side each year, leading the government and commanding the military. It was a role of honour and responsibility, meant only for the most experienced statesmen. But Caligula wanted to give that power to a horse. He told the Senate that Incitatus was more loyal and intelligent than any of them. He said the horse deserved to wear the consul's robe and sit in the chair of state. According to the Roman historian Suetonius, Caligula gave official orders preparing Incitatus for the role. The horse was named a priest and given public ceremonies. He would be soon sworn in as a consul. Senators were forced to smile and nod. They clapped their hands. They bowed to the animal. No one dared to object. Caligula had made clear what he thought of them. He believed the Senate was weak, useless, and easy to control. By choosing a horse as consul, he sent a message to every powerful man in Rome. He didn't need them. He could replace them with an animal and nothing would change. Historians believe that Caligula's act was both an insult and a warning. He humiliated the Senate and dared them to stop him. If they remained silent, it would prove they had no power left, and they remained silent. They feared his anger more than they feared disgrace. Some stories say that the horse never actually became a consul, but that is not what matters. What matters is that the emperor made the preparations. He gave the order. He showed the people of Rome that titles and officers meant nothing to him. He gave his horse a palace while taking land from generals. He gave his horse servants while executing citizens. He dressed Incitatus in purple while others starved. He turned the Roman Empire into a joke and forced everyone to laugh with him. When people heard about Incitatus, they did not cheer. They whispered and wondered if their emperor had lost his mind completely or if he was playing a dangerous game that no one understood. Many now believe this was the moment when Rome truly changed, when power stopped being about rules or reason, when one man's will became stronger than the laws of the Republic. Caligula used his horse to show that he could do anything, say anything, and no one would stop him. And although all of this had been sick and excessive so far, it was not even close to what Caligula actually did and how he viewed people's lives. Caligula constantly reminded everyone that he could kill whomever he wanted, whenever he wanted. He spoke about it in public, repeated it to senators, and even whispered it during private dinners. He believed that the ability to end a life without reason was the highest proof of power. People close to him lived in fear, never knowing whether a glance, a word, or a smile would lead to death. There were no rules and no warnings. The only law was Caligula's mood. His famous sentence, "Let them hate me so long as they fear me," was more than a slogan. Every decision he made, every punishment he ordered was designed to spread fear. He did not want love, he wanted obedience through terror. That was the core of his rule. Caligula did not need a trial to order an execution. He did not need evidence. A person's face could offend him. A voice could annoy him. One senator was executed because his hairstyle looked better than the emperor's. Another man was killed for simply being cheerful. Some were executed for jokes. Others were killed because Caligula wanted to send a message to the crowd. And the worst part was that many of these deaths were turned into entertainment. He invited friends, nobles and politicians to dinner. According to the ancient historian Suetonius, Caligula sometimes had people executed in the middle of a feast. While guests chewed their food, the screams of dying men echoed through the hall. Blood stained the floors beside golden cups. The emperor would lean back, sip his wine, and smile. He once invited a man to dinner whose son he had ordered to be executed the same day. When the man arrived trembling, Caligula said nothing. He wanted to see whether grief or fear would win. He believed that suffering made food taste better. He said pain sharpened the appetite. Some guests vomited at the sight. Others stayed silent, afraid to react. Any signs of disgust could be dangerous. But the emperor watched them closely, enjoying their discomfort. These dinners became tests of loyalty, and those who passed lived another day. Caligula also used the gladiator arena as a place of punishment and revenge. He didn't limit the fights to slaves or criminals. He sent members of noble families into combat. He ordered senators to pick up swords. He punished officials by making them fight in front of the crowd. These people who had never held a weapon in their lives, their deaths were quick, bloody, and humiliating. In some cases, he didn't even wait for a reason. He simply pointed at someone and gave the order. No one refused. Those who hesitated were sent into the arena next. Guards dragged victims through the streets. Some were thrown to wild animals. Others were forced to kill each other for the emperor's amusement. He chose the execution method himself. When the sun was strong and the heat unbearable, Caligula had the awnings of the amphitheatre pulled back. The crowd burned under the sun. He did this to test their patience, to remind them that even their comfort was under his control. People fainted, some died, and as usual no one complained. They knew that complaints led to punishment. Caligula even stepped into the arena himself once. He fought in matches where the result was already decided and his opponents were forced to lose. The crowd clapped because they had to. Everything was a show. For him, every death was a performance. He once ordered an entire section of the audience to be executed because they booed a fight. Hundreds of people were taken away and killed simply for reacting in the wrong way. Caligula treated life like a toy. He believed death was a gift he could give or withhold at any moment. People feared him every day, and that fear was exactly what Caligula wanted. But what he failed to understand was that fear has a limit. The terror he created, the humiliation he inflicted, the pain he treated as entertainment eventually turned even his most loyal protectors into enemies. In the year 41 AD, after only 4 years on the throne, the emperor who claimed to be a god was stabbed to death in a dark corridor by his own guards. Maybe Caligula was broken by childhood trauma. Maybe madness consumed him. Maybe power poisoned his soul. But in the end, none of that matters, because nothing can erase what he did. History remembers him not as a genius, not as a god, but as a symbol of cruelty without limits. And for that, he rightfully carries the title, the cruelest emperor in Roman history.